Stop him before he kills somebody was the order of the day. There wasn't anybody that looked at these things and thought that this was going to end without people dying. That's where the pressure came in. How do I get this guy before people start dying?
Welcome to Investigate, where we break down true cases from the perspective of the investigators who work them. That's a perfect breakdown of Miami Beach. Well, now take me through this case. So in February 2011, multiple fires break out across the city of Miami. Matter of fact, you sent me a video of one of the buildings actually burning, and I want to show it to you. And I just want you to kind of explain to me what's happening. First, what's happening? When did you first get the notification for the first fire call? How did you guys figure out that this was not accidental, and the various different scenes that you had going on?
Well, I know this video quite well. As it turns out, this was the second fire. The structure you're looking at is 218 20th Street, I believe. This was a building, again, we talk about the evolution of Miami Beach and how it impacts this case. This was a very classic building in the Collins Park area. Collins Park being bordered by 23rd Street to the north, 18th Street to the south, and back in Miami Beach's heyday, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, this was a very popular place, nice upscale hotels. And those hotels, of course, had degenerated, but because they were considered historical landmarks, they had to be rebuilt in a manner similar to the way they were built, which was cost prohibitive. It wouldn't fit Miami Beach's new codes, so these buildings stayed vacant for a long time. 218 20th Street was actually in the process of being rebuilt from the inside. The outside is just as resilient as anything modern. It's CBS block, reinforced in many cases, but the insides were almost all wood. They had cement poured staircases, elevator shafts, and all that, but the floors, the walls, all wood. The first building that went up was the Tyler. Shortly after that, less than a week, comes the fire in your video. I get a call from a firefighter by the name of Claudio Navas, who's still with Miami Beach to this day. And he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, there's another building burning a block away from the one from last week." And so I said, "Okay, how bad's the fire?" And he goes, "Well, you need to see this." So I drive over there. There's a building on the north side of 20th Street, and it's partly a parking garage. So I go in there and I get in the elevator and I went to the roof and I took that video. And of course, you're standing up there. As you well know, you go to one of these devastated buildings and you're like, how on earth am I supposed to figure out how this started? Mm-hmm. We had a fairly good homeless population, especially in that area. And the first one, we were still working that out, the Tyler. We were pretty sure that it was intentionally set and it was going to be an incendiary fire. I didn't work for the state, so incendiary wasn't really a big part of my vocabulary as it is now.
Okay, well, first walk us through, what does incendiary actually mean?
There are 4 classifications of fire through US NFPA, the National Fire Protection Administration, brings 4 classifications of fire: accidental, incendiary, natural, and undetermined. So it has to fit into one of those 4 categories, and this is how we classify fires. On the law enforcement side, however, we have criminal mischief, we have arson, we have burning to defraud, we have many other statutes that have to deal with fire. But the statute and what we do as law enforcement officers differ from what we do as fire investigators. The hat I was wearing at that time, I think I was a sergeant in VC domestic at the time. No, I'm sorry, I'd actually moved back over to homicide. So that's what I did, but because I was a certified fire investigator under the Florida standard, I would also investigate all fires.
So a homicide detective, but also a certified fire investigator. I mean, did you get a lot of homicides related to fires, or what was the reasoning for?
No, but my very first one was.
Okay, so is that why you ended up becoming a certified fire investigator in homicide? I guess, what was your interest in fire while being in the homicide unit?
Well, again, I'd gotten into the detective bureau fairly early in my career. Then I left the detective bureau, went back to patrol for a while, had great opportunities, traffic homicide, SWAT, FTO, but I wanted to go back. I was the officer of the year for another case in 2000, and that came with choice of assignment. So I went back to CID, criminal investigations. And then within about a year and a half, I made it. I went to violent crimes, and 2 months later, I was in the homicide office. VC was split at that time, violent crimes, a violent crime squad and the homicide squad. A lot of crossover, but that's where I was working. I was kind of filling in, I think, originally, and then the squad got its first actual homicide. Miami Beach sends a detective to every unresolved or unattended death. Old man dies in his apartment, we send a detective to make sure there's no foul play. That is why Miami Beach had such a great record. 11 years without an unsolved homicide while I was with the unit. Because we go to them all. We don't lose that evidence. We're there at the beginning.
Okay, wait, so pause this. You said 11 years without an unsolved homicide.
Correct. And out of 78 cases, 76 were either cleared by the death of the offender or were prosecuted by the state attorney's office, a record almost unmatched anywhere else.
I mean, let's compare that statistic. I mean, is that 11 years without an unsolved homicide? Do you see that anywhere else in the United States?
I have not. The agencies in Miami that were the gold standard, Miami at one point, Miami-Dade, they average about a 54% clearance rate and a 40% prosecution rate. So when you take a look at that, that was a 100% clearance rate and a 94% prosecution rate. Yeah, but I would love to pat myself on the back for that, and I do quite regularly. But the reality is, it's what I said. I basically, when I took over, I carried over what I had learned from the beginning. And because at the time, our command staff came from Miami Beach officers. Every person in the chief's office at that time, once upon a time, they patrolled those streets. They were answerable to the citizens and the businesses. They bled. Their blood ran into the sidewalk the same as mine did when I was there. So they took that interest. Again, as I said, for a small city, when I got there, it was 26 homicides a year. By the time I took over, it was 9. But we still had 2 squads, VC and homicide. Why? Because we investigated every unattended death. We also did most of the sexual battery investigations. That was split between 4 squads. But when somebody called us up and said, hey, there's a dead person here, any other agency says, okay, well, we'll send an officer and we'll send him over to the medical examiner. If there's anything suspicious, we'll go investigate it. By then, a lot of their evidence is gone. We invested in the best crime scene unit anywhere. We stole them from everybody else. Hialeah, Miami-Dade. We stole all the best crime scene techs. A lot of that comes back to Versace and Cunanan, but story for another day. But we had that. But the attitude was, no, we go there, we investigate them all. We don't know why this guy passed. We're going to make sure that there's no evidence to be preserved. We're going to send crime scene. We're going to take pictures. We're going to send them over. So we're there at the beginning. No other agency, in my opinion, would have made those arrests.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go back to the fire now. So,
yeah, sorry.
Take me back to the fire scene.
I do have a tendency to get off track here. I apologize.
At this point, we've got, from what you're telling me, there's 2 fire scenes.
Yes, we had done February, I think, 11th. No, it was earlier than that. It was the Tyler Hotel had burned. Now, as it turns out, we had done a huge fire 3 blocks away the previous year. And that was the actual Collins Park Plaza had burned. That was juveniles, a girl with a mental problem. So when the Tyler went up, you're looking at maybe homeless people. You're trying to conduct this investigation. You've got guys out doing canvas. But then 6 days later, I guess, I get a call from Claudio Navas, now Lieutenant Navas, who calls me and says, hey, got another building. I think we might have a problem here. So I called the state fire marshal at the time, You didn't meet him, but our ex-captain, Ross Holt, and then Joe Schwartz, James Milton, who was a detective at the time. And they sent me some people, and we took a look at it. And the fire you're looking at there was 218 20th Street. That one was assigned to Charlie Toledo. At the time, I was the only certified fire investigator for the police side of things in Miami Beach. So I utilized one or two fire investigators from the fire side, but I took over the primary responsibility of that. Unfortunately, I was also still a homicide sergeant. So we were already halfway through digging out the Tyler. Then we started on 218 20th Street. The interior of the building was greatly compromised, and we had to get a crew in to do a little shoring up. But we were fortunate, and by then we had a lot of interest. I had 7 or 8 experts, including Joe Schwartz, who taught the origin and cause class, and we went in and we were able to make a determination as to where the fire started, then started taking samples. And from there, we realized quickly this was an intentionally set fire, basically a fire that for the state would be classified as incendiary. But also we had these similarities. Both the Tyler and 218 20th Street had happened in almost the center of the building on the second floor of a 2 or 4 story building. This allowed the fire to grow and spread. The columns of smoke were trapped on the 3rd floor. The building was fully involved before anyone ever knew there was a fire in the building, almost ensuring its complete destruction. That to us seemed like there had to be a lot of planning involved. Somebody would have had to have been surveying the building and taking a look and figuring out how he wanted to do this. Originally, when the Tyler went up, we suspected the owner. He had permits in many times. He wanted to demolish the building and all that. So we were looking at it as a possible owner involved, intentionally set for that purpose.
Okay.
218 20th Street was owned by, I'm not going to go. What I can tell you is it was an overarching organizational structure that incorporated many different investors, and that's the only way they come up with the money to build it to the code that the Historical Society would have accepted. And they did that. They put all the money in. They were currently doing the demo and some shoring work inside when this fire occurred. We did find some evidence of homeless activity, as we almost always do, but oddly enough, restricted to the 1st floor, 218 20th Street. So we get in there, we get a crew. Obviously, we're having some safety issues. That investigation is taking a while. And at that point, we get a fire down the block at the Sun House Apartments. The Sun House was different structurally than the other buildings. It looked like a 3-story, but it was actually a 2-story, and it was in a compound. There's 4 total buildings in Sun House. There's Sun House 1, Sun House 2. There was 2 smaller structures. When they closed the Sun House for rebuilding, they put reinforcing everywhere. Normally, the guy comes up and he wants to get into this building, he just pries off a sheet of plywood. These guys really locked this place down. So once our guy got in the building, he couldn't move freely throughout the building. He did, however, make himself an air shaft, the same as we discovered he'd done in other structures. And he did manage to cause the near total destruction of the building. He got under structural elements and load-bearing walls on the inside. That building had a lot more cement involved in it, and so the collapse wasn't as complete. The fire wasn't as complete because there wasn't good airflow, the good airflow that he'd relied on other places. And so in this particular case, we did get an actual chemical sample that was consistent with acetone.
Acetone. Tell me about acetone.
Okay, acetone, actually almost all the Latin and Cuban women, you'll hear them talk about acetona. It's nail polish remover. Very easy to get. You can go in any drugstore, get it by the quart, but it's water soluble. So we very rarely, it's a fantastic accelerant for the guy who's setting the fire, but we very rarely ever come back with it because like all accelerants, it evaporates rapidly in the air. But unlike gasoline, which has many, many, many different chemicals, most of which you'll get back afterwards, acetone is almost completely consumed by fire, all of its elements. And even if it's not consumed by fire, it's either absorbed into soils, dirts, char and whatnot, or the fire department's hoses wash it completely away, dilutes it completely, and we never get it back.
Okay.
So acetone, I'd had several fires involving acetone. And again, we got that sample, but just so you understand, just like today, as fast as the state lab was, we didn't know that at the time. The night after Sun House goes down, there's a fire in a parking structure 2 blocks away. And this was stolen paper towel rolls, like 4 of them put together, and he lined all the staircases with them, trying to get to fuel packages and under cars, and he lit this up to get the fire to trail a trailer, if you will, to go from one floor to the other and connect different areas.
So this is fire number 4.
This would be fire number 4.
Okay.
So they call me in. I go in to investigate that, and while I'm on my way, there's another fire at 18th Street. And before I even arrive, there's a fire on 16th Street.
This is 6.
Correct. So all of these are fairly small fires. I think it was a dumpster. It wasn't 16th Street, it was Lincoln Road. Behind the 400 block of Lincoln Road, there's a dumpster fire. There's a fire at 18th Street, and I believe that one was the one we all freaked out about. That was a restaurant, and not a very good one. And they have something called a grease trap. So when they clean out the hood systems and whatnot, all the grease goes in there, and other companies come and they collect that. They try to recycle it or whatever they do with cooking oil and grease. So this had been somebody who had set a bunch of stuff at their grease trap, lit it up. That grease trap, fortunately for us, was fairly well sealed. By the time I get there, I go straight to the parking garage. I'm going to figure out everything else as they're going. Claudio Navas comes in. We try to get another investigator from the fire department to come in. That took hours. Turned out to be of no consequence. So I did the parking garage. Parking garage didn't show any sign of accelerant. Looked like they were just using this. In my brain, I was like, okay, well, thank God he's out of, we didn't know about the acetone. Thank God he's out of whatever he's been using.
Okay. I mean, this guy's keeping you guys up. I mean, you're back to back.
This night was insane. So he does a parking garage, not a parking garage. He does a dumpster area. In this dumpster area, he sets the dumpster on fire, and the dumpster really gets going to the point where the dumpster room is sprinklered, and the sprinklers are being defeated by the fire in the dumpster. Obviously, there was probably a lot of cooking products in there, some other things, whatever. The dumpster fire was huge. The problem is that dumpster room was in an 8-story building. And it's one of those dumpsters that's at the bottom of the trash chute. So we had done trash chute fires before, and I knew what the structure was. The main thing was we had to get this thing under control. The fire department got there. They couldn't get a truck in there. Fortunately, 2 very courageous men went in there, grabbed the dumpster, and wheeled it into the alley, out where it was no longer an issue for the building. The fire department could put it out easier. And I literally drove up. As they were pulling it out, took a look. I talked to a couple people. I asked for somebody to come over. I took a couple pictures with my BS little video camera, and we moved on because by now there were more fires. We go down to a fire on, not 100% sure where it was. I think it was 9th Street. There was a residential area, a nice new building. Somebody had taken the clothing out of a dryer and set it on fire. I'm assuming they had to use something to get it going because, as you well know, getting clothes to burn is very difficult unless it's pure cotton. So he puts these at the entrances to the building. We get a phone call from a woman. She's on the 2nd floor. She smells smoke, and when she opens her door to get out, the only way to get out is through this wall of fire that he set at the doorway.
Wow. Okay, so let's pause right there real quick. I mean, you're from what it sounds like, the first fires were to vacant areas, and now this one, it sounds like this guy's setting fire to a place that's occupied, and at the entrances and exits. Is this evolving, or is this getting more serious?
I wish I had an answer for that. At the end of the day, we had many questions for which he did not want to supply an answer. I'm not sure what was going on. This obviously for us was the most serious of the fires. It also pointed out a lot of times in our job now, as when you see a deficiency in a building, there was no other way for this woman to get out. And so she was stuck there with the smoke pouring up the staircase. She was on the second floor, so the heat, the toxic gases are all flowing upstairs to her apartment. So this was definitely an evolution. He also was using combustibles he found at the time. It was a dryer load that somebody left the dryer going. It was South Beach, so 2 o'clock in the morning, some guy's drying clothes, not that unusual. So this is an outdoor dryer. He takes the clothes, lines them up, don't know what he used to set them on fire. Once they were on fire, however, they didn't go out very easily. And so that was, she calls there. When they get there, however, on the other side of the fence, in the alley, there's a burning dumpster. So on that one, because he's on video, I know that it's ordinary combustibles, a couple of lighters he's got. He gets that going, and then he positions it well so that the dumpster takes off burning. So I don't know. It was so unlike all the other fires that it was a very, had we not tricked him into confessing that fire, I don't think we would have pinned it on him. We got the experts together to bring them together by the way they were set, how they were set, and all that, the types of structures he targeted. This was unlike anything else he targeted. But this entire night, 13 fires in one night.
13 fires in one night.
Correct. He said 13 fires in one night. And there was, again, many different, he did a couple of dumpsters, one of which was almost catastrophic. The building he set it in was actually, they targeted a much older demographic, and the potential for disaster, it's just a dumpster fire, but because of the way it was set up, the potential for disaster on that one was huge. Then you have this building where obviously there's apartments there. If the fire department wasn't doing anything else, you get there, you get a ladder, you break out the window, and you pull her out. In this case, every fire truck we had was being used. The fire truck that went there was a City of Miami fire truck. The dumpster fire was being fought by a Miami-Dade fire truck. We had run out of equipment.
So at this point, you're running out of fire trucks to put out the fires that this guy's been setting.
We had run out of fire trucks in the first hour. I'm going south, one scene at a time. And all I'm trying to do is figure out how to hold these scenes, because I'm also quickly running out of police officers.
One thing I gotta ask you is, as you're telling the story, it sounds like you're more in the reactive, or it sounds like PD and fire in the reactive.
Oh my God, yeah.
How are you guys, this guy's going around setting 13 fires in one night. Are you getting a clue to where he's going to next? Are you trying to, how can you guys stop this guy? I mean, how are you not able to track him down?
He's heading due south.
Okay.
He's staying on the east side of the city, and he's heading due south. He's obviously using the alleys in some cases and the roads in other cases. Because some of his targets, we can't really tell whether he had pre-scoped this place. There's a lot of, at the time we're thinking that he's getting what he's getting out of dumb luck. He goes to, at the time, one of the first really upscales, I think it was called Prime 112. But he goes to the back of Prime 112 and he takes these cloths. Now, because Prime 112 is so upscale, their cloth is pure cotton, which burns exceptionally well. I think I've told you many times, rare to get a really good fire where I don't learn something. I didn't know how well that stuff burned. But he actually moved it right next to their grease trap.
Wow.
So that thing went up. And because fire rises and the overhead was minimal, we lucked out. Had that been compartmentalized, had it had a decent roof over it, the grease container, and I'm talking dozens of gallons of flammables in that container. Had that gone up, the building would have been destroyed.
So at the end of this night, you have 13 fires.
Yes.
In total, though, from the time it started to the end of this night, how many total fires are there?
I have the three majors, which is the Tyler, the 218 20th Street, and Sun House.
So you have 16 total.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what's next? I mean, what are you thinking at the end of this night when you finally get home? Well, do you even go home?
I don't think I did, actually. But at this point, I'm divided in three different directions. I believe that we discussed how I originally became a detective, organizing surveillances in areas, looking at stats, what days and times and all that when things happen, and setting up surveillance to prevent or catch things. This is how my detective career started, focusing on crime. Oddly enough, a pretty unique background, attacking things statistically. What's my best area? This is my best area on a Tuesday night between 2 and 6. At any rate, everybody's up in arms. ATF now is over on Miami Beach, State Fire Marshal. I've got everybody.
So at the end of the night, you made the call to federal and state partners.
We made the call after 218 20th Street in the person of Joe Schwartz. He was livid because ATF showed up with the vans with ATF printed all over them, and they were just parking them all over the Collins Park area. So he's like, they're getting advertising and nobody realizes we're doing all the work. And Joe,
well, let's pause right
Joe
there.
was very upset.
Tell me a little bit. I mean, what is it like? I mean, at this point, you're a city Miami Beach detective, and
Yes.
you're calling in the ATF or federal, and the state fire marshal was a state agency
Yes.
to come and assist. What does it look like working with federal and state partners? It's your investigation, and the federal and state agents are coming in to assist, right?
Yes.
Are they leading the case, or what role are they playing, or how are they helping you?
Well, you're talking about the difference between an ordinary day and what this had evolved into. We had fires before that had, like in clubs and things like that, that were staged to be racial incidents or anti-club or owner disputes and things like that. And ATF always comes in on that because almost all of these businesses have an interstate nexus. For that reason, they can file charges that we can't. They also have access to laboratories and testing that we do not. They employ electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. So we can reach out to them for help, and if they find an interstate nexus, something that allows them to be involved, they then become part of the case. But in the long run, the agency having jurisdiction, which in my case for these fires was Miami Beach, they have a responsibility to the people of Miami Beach first and foremost. The State Fire Marshal's office, they assist on any case where an agency requests it. We could get accelerant testing done more rapidly, plus the state had dogs, bobcats, heavy equipment, and more importantly, they're also the guys you want, if you make an arrest, to go on the stand and say, yes, this is what an indicator is of. This is why I know the fire started here. This is why I know the fire spread from here. This is why I know that this fire is an incendiary fire rather than accidental. So these are the guys you want. And I had them all. In this case, I was just overwhelmed. There was no way I could work these cases. At the time, I don't know if I've actually gotten over it, I wasn't much of a delegator. I want to work the case. I want to get my hands in there. I want to see where everything is. I want to be satisfied that what can be done has been done. Makes me a really bad delegator. I'm not really much of a supervisor, to be honest. But in this case, it's something I had to learn. ATF shows up. ATF says, hey, what do you need us to do? I said, man, I need backs. I need guys with shovels. Well, they weren't really comfortable with that. But at the time, the investigator at the time was Kevin Bonikowski, who later became the ASAC there. And we talked him into it, so he would put 9 guys on my scene with shovels, 9 guys in suits doing canvas, and then they would swap. because of that, I got to say, the guys he sent us did an amazing job. What they managed to clear out in debris to get us to where we needed to go, amazing, amazing job. But anyway, at the end of that night, sun comes up. We're trying to isolate these scenes. We're trying to document them as much as we can, and we had to triage them. I got 13 fire scenes. I don't have that many crime scene techs. I don't have the number of police officers to hold these scenes. So we try to divide them out, try to figure out where we're going to get our best evidence, both chemically, DNA, fingerprints, and I set people to work. By now, my phone's blowing up. I go to the police station. I got police chiefs and majors and mayors and city councilmen and all that. What are you guys doing? So at that point, we had to set up a kind of a surveillance network. And like I said, just because of my background, I was the best guy for that job. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the time for that job. So there were two other sergeants that we used. One was the CST guy, and then which was a crime suppression team. And then one of the other people that volunteered was the other sergeant in the homicide office, Ebe Garcia. So Ebe, on some nights, he took overall supervision responsibility, and then he and I mapped out how we were going to do this.
Actually, let's pause right there real quick. Before you talk about setting up the surveillance, you talked about that you have everybody calling your phone and asking you what is being done in this case.
Correct.
What role does pressure from higher-ups and politicians play in these cases? I mean, like, how are you handling the pressure to solve this case?
In other places, it would be done differently. Miami Beach, at least at that time, had a different culture than almost everything else. And you especially saw it, like I said, in the homicide unit. Okay? Some guy dies in his mansion down on 400 in Alton, and some guy dies in a Section 8 house. That's the same to us. Our culture, we want to know what this is. The pressure for me came to this image that I still see to this day of these two guys dragging a dumpster out of a building that had that building, the fire got into the trash chute of that building. The number of dead there could have been incredible. The number of injured. That's where the pressure came in. How do I get this guy before people start dying?
So you were not fazed by pressure from politicians or anything else. You wanted to get the job done.
Quite the opposite. The pressure from politicians meant that I could walk into my major and say, this is what I need. By the end of this thing, I had an almost unlimited overtime budget. There was a night where I put 18 detectives on overtime, some of them in rented vehicles. What the city was paying to put up the proactive investigation, because again, mine, as you mentioned, is a reactive and investigative role, but I was also responsible for the proactive investigation, putting guys out, trying to identify subjects. We were also looking at anybody who had been involved in a fire in the last 15 years. I had the crime analysts. I had them working around the clock. All of their other duties were set aside. That's what political pressure does in Miami Beach. When you're the man, you walk in, and at that time, yes, the focus is on me, but what that means is I walk up to the major's office, knock on the door, and he invites me in, and the first words out of his mouth are, what do you need to make this stop?
Okay, so he gives you what you need. And all right, so sorry, go on about the surveillance network that you start setting up to find this guy.
Correct. I utilized my past experience and where we had, again, it's police work. It's a lot more failure than success. So you take a look at your past failures, where your surveillance hasn't worked, and it's guys kind of going off the rails. Oh, I think it might be better off here, or they are more comfortable in certain areas. So we set up these areas, and we're like, look, if it happens somewhere else, fine. Send a couple guys down there to see if they find a suspect, but we stay with what we got. We set up this area. The Collins Park area was still where all of our major fires had occurred. And it's where we felt that this guy was comfortable. where he had access to what he needed and where people were going to be able to identify him and his movements. I can tell you that every chance I got, I was taking Sergeant Weiss at the time and his CST team, and we were flooding the buildings, every homeless guy. We were jacking everybody. What did you see? What did you hear? What you do? You made mention of something, and I didn't correct it at the time, that occupied building was appeared to be a change in tactics for him. From the way we looked at it, the potential for him to be killing homeless people who were residing in these buildings was just as big a horror for us as the high-priced building that he set up. That we were going to go through this building and find some homeless guy who didn't do anything but try to find a place out of the rain to sleep. That haunted us. We knew that was all of that was going to happen. Stop him before he kills somebody was the order of the day. Okay, yes, we were losing buildings. Yes, we were losing money. Yes, it was a ton of resources. But stop him before he kills somebody. There wasn't anybody that looked at these things and thought that this was going to end without people dying. So, as a correction, yes, the woman that got trapped in the building really wakes you up. But we always, from the get-go, oh, please don't let anybody have been in this building when it collapsed. That was always that thought in our head. So we set up this surveillance. Ebe did some of it. Charlie did some of it. And we kind of decided, okay, we're going to take the heat for losing some. And we had majors in it and assistant chiefs. Look, if we run around and put 2 guys here and 2 guys there and 3 guys over here, we're going to lose. If we accept that we're going to lose and we concentrate on these 2 areas and make sure that we have all this stuff covered, these alleys, these crosswalks, these areas, and we set this up, we may not have success in the first one, but by this time we're all experienced guys. We're going to have to eat a failure. And fortunately, the chief at the time, Carlos Noriega, he stepped up and he goes, okay, taking that heat is my problem. Get this guy. And so we did. We set up a surveillance, but at that point in time, I would do a little bit of surveillance at the setup, usually an hour or 2, check posts, look for things, go check guys that they stopped. But I was spending every daylight hour on fire scenes. State fire marshal detectives had taken over most of my scenes, but they still wanted me to direct everything that happened. And we had brought in a crane on one scene. We had bobcats and earth movers. We had all kinds of things going on. We had 18 ATF detectives, not including their supervisory staff. Unlike FBI, ATF shows up and they're like, okay, well, how do we integrate with you? They don't step on you and stuff like that. They don't take it over. They're not doing press conferences every 2 hours. But they'll, hey, we need to be a part of this. We want to be out front with you. How do we do that? And so we had a fairly good working relationship with ATF. They did not have a fairly good working relationship with the state fire marshal. I had other concerns. I really did. I had other problems.
So at this point, you're big time delegator. You've got a lot going on. You're
Yes.
trying to investigate these scenes, but at the same time, you have another squad dedicated to setting up surveillance and trying to find this guy.
I was going through 3 sets of clothes a day.
Okay. And I mean, how many hours were you working?
Well, we're about to get to the last one, and by the time that started, I'd been working for 54 hours straight.
So you said the last one. There's another fire.
Another big one.
Okay.
So we set up the surveillance. And again, we were working the Collins Park area, and what we had said was Lincoln Road is the southern border. We don't want guys going off in there. Our big buildings, our big losses, where we think he's hanging, is the Collins Park area. So we had gridded it off. What we were looking at was 17th Street to 23rd Street, Collins Avenue to maybe Washington. But in this particular area, the roads widen. So you're looking at 5 or 6 blocks. And so we set up surveillance. Again, the upside to all this is the city's like, they don't care what it costs. How many detectives do you need? How much overtime? And when there's overtime involved, volunteers are not that tough to find. So we had to pick a litter. We would go to these guys and go, hey, look, I know you got this guy on something else, but this guy's awesome and I need him. So I was pulling in sergeants. I had a lieutenant on the detail for a while, just because this is a guy that did SIU in the really bad old days, and he could follow anybody anywhere. So we pulled all these guys together. We rented some cars. We used all of our UC cars, set up guys on rooftops, you name it. Again, at its height, we had 18 people. But for the most part, we had about a 12-man detail that answered to Ebe Garcia. Ebe Garcia, every time something came up, he'd be calling me on the phone. Hey, can you come by and look at this guy? Hey, can you come by and look at that guy? What do you know about this building? So it just never ended. I was going to work maybe 5 in the morning. I was happy when I could get home at midnight, grab a couple hours, and then go back. It was just that kind of thing. The upside to this whole thing is it didn't last very long. So one night, I get home very late. By then, I think we had something going on at Sun House. We had 2 nights before we had that string. We had a couple of guys that got stopped. I was driving halfway home. They would call me. I would turn around and I'd drive back. Hey, we're interviewing this guy. We're interviewing that guy. So at one point, they come to me. I was sound asleep on my desk. Look, go home. I'm like, wow, I've been on duty for like 48 hours. So I drive home, take a shower, go to bed. And I kid you not, it was like there was a button in my pillow. As soon as my head hit it, phone goes off. Bing. Steve Garcia. Hey, we got this guy. And I like him.